Hi, welcome once again to our YouTube channel. Thanks for subscribing to our channel. We really appreciate you. And in this particular series, we shall be treating past questions from the Jamb collection. So we'll be looking at a series of questions that have been asked by Jamb over the years, and we'll be giving well-detailed explanations to all of the questions as we come across them. I will implore you to try as much as possible to pay keen attention to all of the explanations that will be given in tackling all of the questions. I wish you success in your exam, and please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much. Hi, welcome once again to our Jamb series. Right now we shall be taking questions from the 2014 Jamb biology questions. So that is where we are starting from. So these are the questions for the 2014 Jamb biology. So let us take them. Question 1 is a regular Jamb question, so we'll move straight to question 2. So let's see what question 2 is saying. Now for question 2, we'll be using this diagram here to answer question 2 and question 3. We can see the instruction there. It says use the diagram below to answer question 2 and 3. Now this is a diagram of Iglena viridis. That's the diagram that we are having here. So question 2 there says the part labeled 2 is the A. Nucleus, B. Eye spot, C. Basal granule, and D. Contractile vacuole. Now if you look at all of the parts that are labeled there, let me just mention them. The part labeled 1 there is the eye spot. This part here, the eye spot. The part labeled 2 is the nucleus. The part labeled 3 here is where we have the contractile vacuole. And then the part labeled 4 here, we have the chloroplast. So the answer to question 2, the part labeled 2, which is this part here. The part labeled 2 is the nucleus. That is our answer, option A. So we have question 1 to be regular, and then question 2, we said the answer is option A. So we'll move straight to question 3. The part responsible for photosynthesis is labeled Roman numeral 3, Roman numeral 4, Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2. The part that is responsible for photosynthesis, it is actually this part here. This part here, which is the chloroplast. So that is the Roman numeral 4. So Roman numeral 4 is option B. Option B. Before we go further, the reason why I said the part that is labeled 4 is the part that is responsible for photosynthesis is because that part labeled 4 is the chloroplast, and the chloroplast is the part of the plant that is responsible for giving the plant its green coloration. Hence, it is responsible for photosynthesis. So that is the answer to question 3. So we'll move to question 4 now. The lowest level of organization in living organism is organ, cell, system, and tissue. Now when we look at that particular question, these are the system that we have for level of organization. The levels of organization, we have the cell. So group of cells form what we refer to as tissues. Then a group of cells with similar function and structure give us tissues. Then group of tissues with similar structure and function make what we refer to as organs. And then group of organs with similar function and structure makes what we refer to as the system. And then group of systems with similar function and structure makes up the organisms. So when we look at it now, the question there says the lowest level of organization in living organism is, the answer is option B, which is the cell. That is our answer for that particular question, option B. So we'll move to question 5 now. Which of the following is the most complex according to their cellular level of organization? A. Heart, B. Air, C. Iglena, and D. Hydra. Now when we look at this, going back to what we just talked about now, here where we have cells, tissues, organs, system, and organism. Going to this now, we'll be able to answer that question. Here we have heart. Heart is an example of an organ. That is where we have heart. Here is where we have the heart. Right under here is where we have heart. When we look at other ones, we have hair, Euglena, Hydra. Now, Euglena and Hydra, they are collection of cells that make up tissues. They are not really an organ. So here is where we have Euglena and the other organism there, which is Hydra. So Hydra and Euglena fall under tissues, and then we have the cell to be the hair. So the answer to that question, which is happening to be the most complex of all of these substances labeled here, is the heart. It is the heart that is the most complex of these options that we have here. So that is our answer to question 5. Option A. Which is for question 6. So use the diagram below to answer question 6 and 7. So this is the diagram that we are having there. This particular diagram here. So with this now, we are answering question 6 and 7. So question 6 there says the organs for attachment to the lining of the host intestine are labeled. We have Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, 4. So what are the organs of attachment for this particular substance? It is a parasite. So how does it affix itself to its host? So it makes use of some of these organelles. So which ones does it make use of? So it makes use of Roman numeral 3 as well as Roman numeral 2. So those are the parts that it makes use of. So that is option A. Option A is the part that it makes use of to attach itself to its host. So that is answer to question 6, option A. Option A. Then question 7 now. The young proglottid is represented by Roman numeral 3, Roman numeral 4, Roman numeral 1, or Roman numeral 2. So what is a proglottid? That is the first thing we need to understand. Proglottids. They are usually found in the neck region of the worms. So if we go by that now, we find out that the proglottid is actually this part here that we are seeing labeled Roman numeral 4. That is where we have the proglottid. So the young proglottid is represented by Roman numeral 4. So option B is our answer to question 7. Option B. So we'll move to question 8 now. Which of the following organisms is multicellular? A. Chlamydomonas. B. Spirogyra. C. Amoeba. And D. We have Euglena. So which of those organisms is multicellular? Now, when we talk about multicellular organisms, we are talking about organisms that have more than one cell. That is what multicellular organisms are. So when we look at this, Chlamydomonas, Amoeba, Euglena, they are usually unicellular organisms. The one that has more than one cell is the Spirogyra because it has complex structure and numerous filaments. So that is the answer to question 8. It has multiple cells. So that is our answer for question 8. Option B is our answer to question 8. So we'll move to question 9 now. In bryophytes, sex organs are produced in the protonema, the sporophyte, the gametophyte, and then the rhizoid. So we have that as our question for question 9. So first and foremost, we need to understand what the bryophytes are. So what are bryophytes? Bryophytes are non-vascular plants. Bryophytes are non-vascular plants. They are non-vascular plants. An example of such plants, we have e.g. we have the mosses, we have a liverwort, we also have the hornworts. Now, they have their sex organs produced in the gametophyte. They are non-vascular plants that produce their sex organs in the gametophytes. They produce their sex organ in the gametophyte, which is the dominant phase of its life cycle. Which is the dominant phase of their life cycle. So the dominant phase of the life cycle of the bryophyte is usually the gametophyte. So that is the answer to our question. It is in the gametophyte that we have the sex organs of that particular organism. So the answer is option C. So we'll move to question 10. Seed plants are the most dominant vegetation on land because of A. Their motile gametes, B. Their ability to photosynthesize, C. Efficient seed dispersal, and D. Availability of water. Now when we look at this particular question, we need to rule out the wrong answers one after the other. Now when we say that seed plants are the most dominant vegetation on land, what do we mean by seed plants? We're talking about plants that actually produce seeds. Plants that produce seeds. So why are they very much, or why are they dominant on land? It is not because they are motile. They do not have motile gametes. When we talk about plants, plants can never be motile. They do not have the ability to move. So it is not because they have motile gametes. And then their ability to photosynthesize does not necessarily make them dominant organism on the land. They do not have the ability to photosynthesize so as to become dominant on land. Their ability to photosynthesize only makes it possible for them to flourish and then to produce their food. And then it is not also the availability of water that causes them to be dominant. It is because of their seed dispersal efficiency. They have efficiency in the dispersal of their seeds. So their seeds are adequately dispersed, and that is why they are dominant in the vegetation, or they are dominant on land. So that is the answer to question 10, option C. So move to question 11 now. Let's see what question 11 is saying. Which of the following is an arboreal organism? When we talk about arboreal organism, we are talking about environments that are found in the air. So which of these organisms can be found in the air, which is the arboreal habitat? Elephant, fish, antelope, and bird. We have elephant to be a terrestrial organism. Fish is an aquatic organism. Antelope is also a terrestrial organism. The only option there we have is the bird, which is option D. And then we move to question 12. Use the diagram below to answer question 12 and 13. Now this is the diagram we're talking about. You can see the diagram there. So we are using this diagram to answer question 12 and 13. So let us see what question 12 says. It says the part labeled 1 is the A. Xylem, B. Phloem, C. Root hairs, and D. Cortex. The part labeled Roman numeral 1. So let us see what is that. This is Roman numeral 1. So this part here is what we are talking about. So what is that part called? Xylem, phloem, root hairs, or cortex? And that is option C, which is the root hairs. So question 12 is option C. And then we have 13. The diagram is the transverse section of a monocotyledonous stem, dicotyledonous stem, monocotyledonous root, and dicotyledonous root. Now when we look at that diagram again, we will discover that the diagram is that of a plant. Now what kind of plant is this? It is a dicotyledonous plant. Why? Because you can see that it is having a tap root here. You can see that it is having a tap system here. So it is a dicotyledonous root that we are actually talking about here. The dicotyledonous root is what we are talking about here. So that is the answer to that particular question, option D. And then we move to question 14 now. Question 14 that gives us this dental formula. You can see this dental formula here, this dentition. And then it says the general formula above represents that of A. An omnivore, B. A detritus feeder, C. A carnivore, and D. A herbivore. Now we have a clue. In as much as we have our canine here to be 0, 0, our canine is 0, 0 as you can see here, irrespective of what the incisor, the premolar, and the molar is telling us. Since our canine is 0, 0, it tells us that it is a herbivore. Herbivores do not have canine. So the answer to this particular question is D, which is a herbivore. D. And then question 15 there says, a circulatory system is very essential in mammals but not in smaller organisms like amoeba because A. Amoeba lives in fresh water. B. Diffusion is sufficient to transport materials in amoeba. C. Amoeba lacks blood containing hemoglobin. D. Amoeba exhibits anaerobic respiration. So what is the answer to that question? What is circulatory system? Circulatory system is talking about the ability of the blood to be able to transport materials around the body. Let me put it here. Circulatory system is responsible for transporting materials, e.g., hormones, water, waste materials, food or nutrients, etc. across the body. So that is what the circulatory system is responsible for. So the question now is asking us, it said the circulatory system is very essential in mammals but not in smaller organisms like amoeba, because amoeba lives in fresh water. That is necessarily not the reason. The environment of amoeba does not have anything to do with the circulation of nutrients in the body of the organism. B there says diffusion is sufficient to transport materials in amoeba. Yes, diffusion is actually sufficient enough to transport materials in amoeba, because amoeba is usually a unicellular organism, and since it is a unicellular organism, it is not big. So diffusion should be able to transport materials in the body of the amoeba. C. Amoeba lacks blood containing hemoglobin. Now, amoeba does not even have any blood, so the blood does not necessarily have to contain hemoglobin. That is not the answer. And then option D there says amoeba exhibits anaerobic respiration. That is also not the answer to our question. So the answer to our question is option B. Option B. And then we move to question 16. In vascular plants, the sieve tubes and companion cells are present in the A. cambium, B. cortex, C. xylem, and D. phloem. When we talk about vascular plants, we are talking about plants that have vascular tissues. And vascular tissues in plants, basically there are two. Vascular tissues, we have them to be two. We have the xylem and the phloem. Now, for all that was mentioned, all those things that were mentioned, they can be found in the phloem. The phloem transports food from leaves to the plant, and it is composed of sieve tubes. In the phloem, we have structures like the sieve tubes. We have the companion cells. Also in the phloem, we have the phloem parenchyma. We have the phloem parenchyma. We have the phloem parenchyma and the phloem fiber. So all of these are structures that are found in the phloem. So that is where the answer to this question here lies. In vascular plants, the sieve tubes and companion cells are present in the phloem. That is option D. Question 16. And then we have question 17. The stomata of leaves are similar in function to the A. pharynx of humans, B. scales of fish, C. spiracle of insects, and D. trachea of toads. Now, when we look at this particular question, we get to see that the stomata of leaves help for respiration. It helps to carry out for the exchange of gas in plants. That is what the stomata there is used for. So we have the spiracle of insects to carry out a similar function as well. It is definitely not the pharynx in humans, because pharynx of humans is the passage from the mouth into the esophagus, and then scales of fishes, they are also responsible for regulating body temperature of the fishes and then protection of the body. But when we talk about the spiracle of insect, the spiracle of insect helps them in respiration, as well as the trachea of the toads. Trachea of the toads also is an organ of respiration in the toads. But basically the reason why we will not be picking the trachea of the toads here is because the major organ of respiration in the toads is their skin. So the answer we will be picking there or going with here is option C for question 17. Option C. And then question 18 there. The use of moist skin for respiration in amphibians is known as A. Cellular respiration, B. Cutaneous respiration, C. Buccal respiration, and D. Pulmonary respiration. Now it is just similar to what we talked about some minutes ago, where I made mention of the ability of the toads to respirate with their skin, and that is why we did not pick trachea of toads for question 17 as the answer. So in 18 here now we can see that the moist skin is what amphibians use for respiration, and since it is the skin, it is termed the cutaneous respiration. It is not cellular respiration, nor is it pulmonary respiration, and it is not buccal respiration because they do not breathe with their mouth. It is cutaneous respiration. So that is option B. Question 18, option B. And then question 19 now. Water in plants is removed as water vapor through the process of A. Diffusion, B. Osmosis, C. Evaporation, and D. Transpiration. The answer to this question is transpiration. It is not diffusion nor is it osmosis. Diffusion is movement of materials from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration until there is an even distribution. So it is not diffusion and it is not osmosis. It is also not evaporation. The process is called transpiration. That is the answer to question 18. Transpiration is a process whereby water molecule is taken out of plants into the surrounding. So that is the answer to question 19. So we move to question 20 now. An example of organ of perennation in plant is A. Rhizome, B. Seed, C. Petal of flower, and D. Calyx of flower. That is the question that we have there. And when we talk about perennation of plants, we have different examples of organisms that carry out perennation in plants. And basically the answer that we have there is the rhizome. The rhizome is the answer to this question here, an organ of perennation in plants. The answer is rhizome. That is option A. So we move further to question 21. Alternation of generation is a feature shown in mosses, fungi, grasses, conifers. It is only the fungi here that has the ability to alternate its generations. Only the fungi. That is the answer to that particular question here for question 21, which is alternation of generation is a feature that is shown in, it is the fungi. It alternates between algae and itself. So that is what the answer there is. Option B. So we move to question 22 now. We have to look at this series of steps. 1. Growth is mainly apical. 2. Growth is specific with definite shape. And 3. Growth is throughout life. Now question says, which of the above correctly describes the growth pattern in plants? A says 1, 2, and 3 only. B says 2 and 3 only. C says 1 and 2. And D says 1 and 3. Now when we look at plant growth, the growth pattern that is found in plant, growth is mainly apical. Yes, growth in plant is apical. So that is absolutely correct. Then Roman numeral 2, growth is specific with definite shape. No, growth in plant is not specific and it does not have definite shape, and that is why plants usually have different types of shapes. So this option 2, Roman numeral 2 here is not part of it, it's wrong. And then Roman numeral 3 there says growth is throughout life. Yes, growth in plant is throughout life. Growth in plant is indefinite. So we have Roman numeral 1 and Roman numeral 3 to be answers to our question, and that is option D. So 23 now. Coordination and regulation of body activities in mammals are achieved by the A. Nerves and muscles. B. Nerves and hormones. C. Nerves only. D. Hormones only. Now when we talk about coordination, we have different types of coordination, and basically we have two of them. Coordination is the arrangement and responses given to body processes. Now basically we have two types. We have hormonal coordination and we have nervous coordination. So those are the two types of coordination that we have. Hormonal coordination makes use of hormone, nervous coordination makes use of muscles and neurons. So that is where we ask our answer lies. So that is option B, nerves and hormones. Option B. So we move to question 24. The cerebellum of the brain controls A. Reflex action, B. Muscular activity, C. Emotional expressions, and D. The endocrine system. When we talk about the cerebellum, we're talking about a part of the brain, a major functional part of the brain that is found in the hindbrain, and it has numerous functions. And so we'll quickly look at some of the functions of the cerebellum. Functions of the cerebellum. There are so many, so we'll just quickly point out a few of them. Now, the cerebellum is a very important part of the brain. It is responsible for coordinating activities of the body, basically involuntary activities. It coordinates involuntary activities of the body. Involuntary activities like sneezing, like laughing. Activities like sneezing, activities like blinking, e.g. blinking. Yes, that is an involuntary activity in our body. Jerking of the knee is also an involuntary activity. So those are coordinated by the cerebellum. Other things that are done by the cerebellum, it also helps to coordinate activities of the body muscles. Coordinates activities of the body muscles. So some activities that our body carry out, they are coordinated by the cerebellum. Also, it is responsible for controlling balance and posture. Also controls balance and posture. Those are some other controls of the some of the activities that are carried out by the cerebellum. So I will not want to bore too much talk. So these are some of the things that it does. It is responsible for maintaining firmness of the body as well. It also maintains firmness of the body. So if we look at all of these that we have written here, we'll be able to make a pick of what the answer to our question there is talking about. You can see that the answer to this question is option B, which is muscular activity. So that's for question 24. So on 25, the part of the brain responsible for peristalsis is the A. olfactory lobe, B. the medulla oblongata, C. the hypothalamus, and D. the thalamus. Now, this particular activity of the body, peristalsis, or talking about digestion, how the movement of the food down the throat is is actually monitored or controlled by the medulla oblongata. It is not the olfactory lobe. The olfactory lobe is responsible for carrying out smell sensation. That is what the olfactory lobe does. And then it is not the thalamus nor is it the hypothalamus, because they are responsible for monitoring or regulating several processes that takes place in the body. So this particular process that we're talking about for peristalsis, the action is coordinated or is being monitored by the medulla oblongata. So the medulla oblongata is responsible for that particular process. But let us just see a few things that the medulla oblongata is also responsible for. Medulla oblongata now, functions of the medulla oblongata. Number one, I will say that it regulates the heartbeat. Regulates heartbeat. Another one is that it controls digestion and peristalsis. It controls digestion and peristalsis. Another thing it does is that it controls breathing and respiration. Controls breathing and respiration. These are a few of the things that the medulla oblongata does. It is also responsible for secreting saliva. It controls the secretion of saliva. Secretion of saliva. You can also have it controlling laughter. Controls laughter as well as sneezing. So these are a few of the actions of the medulla oblongata. So we can see that it is responsible for peristalsis here, like the question has instructed us, like the question has asked us. So that is the answer to the 25th question there. That is the medulla oblongata, option B. So question 26 now. Which of the following instruments is used for measuring atmospheric pressure? Hydrometer, hygrometer, thermometer, barometer. Let us quickly look at the function of all of these instruments. Hygrometer, hydrometer, barometer, thermometer. We can even add a few. Let's add Secchi disc. Secchi disc. We can add anemometer. Anemometer. Let's add wind vane. There are so many others that we can add, but let's just leave it at this first. So if we look at it now, what is the function of the hydrometer? The hygrometer is responsible for measuring humidity and water vapor. It measures humidity and water vapor. That is what the hygrometer does. And then for the hydrometer measures density. It measures density and specific gravity. And specific gravity. Now looking at the barometer, barometer is responsible for measuring atmospheric pressure. It measures atmospheric pressure. We have the thermometer that is used for measuring temperature, degree of hotness or coldness of a body. We have the Secchi disc that is used to measure the turbidity in water. Turbidity in water. We have an anemometer that is used to measure the speed of wind speed. It is used to measure wind speed. We have the wind vane that also checks wind capability, but this time around it is the wind direction. So we have so many of them that we can make mention of, but the particular one that our question is asking us for is the barometer, which is the function of it is the atmospheric pressure which is the function of the barometer. So that is our answer there. Barometer. It says the instrument that is used to measure atmospheric pressure is barometer. That is option D. 26. And then we move to question 27. The influence of soil on organisms in a habitat is referred to as A. Edaphic factor, B. Physiographic factor, C. Biotic factor, and D. Topographic factor. Whenever we see the word soil here, soil has everything to do with edaphic. So this particular question here is talking about none other than the edaphic. It is not the physiographic, it is not biotic, because biotic talks about living thing. Biotic components are just plants and animals, organisms that have life in them. And then topography is talking about the plane of that particular soil level or the field or that is being talked about. So topography talks about it either being steepy or being slopey. But when we talk about the soil structure itself, it is talking about the edaphic factors, and that is option A. So we move to question 28. The genetic makeup of an organism is described as A. Allele, B. Chromosome, C. Phenotype, and D. Genotype. When we talk about this brings us to talk about genetics and variation and all of those chromosomes. So what is an allele? An allele is a participating character in a pair of gene. Example, we can have something that looks like this. This together makes up what we refer to as a trait. So it can be broken down into two, where we'll be having this and this. So each of these now is what we refer to as an allele. So that is what an allele is. And then the second thing we have there talks about the chromosome. Chromosome. When we look at the word chromosome there, what we are actually looking at is chromosomes. Generally, they are thread-like materials. Chromosomes are thread-like materials or structures that have differing lengths with differing lengths. Their lengths differ, and they are made up of DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, RNA, which is the ribonucleic acid, as well as proteins. Now, chromosomes are responsible for bearing or carrying what we refer to as genes. So chromosomes carry genes, which determines the structure and function of a cell. Determines the structure and function of a cell. Chromosomes are usually colored bodies. Because they are transparent, but they have the ability to accept color because of the particular substance that they contain, which is called a chromatin granule. So that is what chromosomes are. So we have the next one that we have to talk about now to be the phenotype. So what is the phenotype? Phenotype is actually the manifestation of the physical appearance of an organism, which is as a result of the environmental influence on that organism. So these are some of the interpretations to some of those options that we have in our question there. So allele, we can see what an allele is here. It is just a split up of what we refer to as the traits. Then we have the chromosomes as well as the phenotype. So the answer to our question there, according to this question here, we have it to be the genotype. The genetic makeup of an organism is described as the genotype. That is option D. And then we move to question 29. The major limiting factor of productivity in aquatic habitat is A. Food, B. Temperature, C. Water, D. Sunlight. Food is the major determinant that we have here that can actually propel or limit the productivity that can be found in the aquatic habitat. It definitely is not temperature nor is it sunlight, because even when the surface of the water seems to or feels to be warm or hot for the aquatic life, they have the ability to go down into the water that is absolutely very cold for them, or that is cold enough for them to survive. And it is also not water, because that is their natural environment. So the answer to that question is food. When there is surplus of food, it can promote productivity, and when there is absence of food, it can reduce or limit what productivity will be like in that environment. So the answer to that question is option A, which is food. Option A. And then we move to question 30. Which of the following group of organisms feed directly on grain plants? A. Primary consumers, B. Secondary consumers, C. Producers, and D. Decomposers. The answer to this question is straightforward, but let us just look at how food is being transferred in the feeding relationship. So in a feeding relationship, particularly in a food chain, we have this to be our producer. Producers are naturally the grain plants, and then they are fed upon by the primary consumers, and then secondary consumers, and then we can have tertiary consumers before we now think of having the decomposers. So that is how the chain goes. So it is the primary consumers that feed on the producers. The producers are the grain plants. The grain plants, those are the producers. Example of a primary consumer, we can have grasshopper. Grasshopper can be example of a primary consumer feeding directly on a grain plant. So majorly the primary consumers, they are herbivores, organisms that can feed on plants. Those are the primary consumers. So that is the answer to that particular question. So the question there, the primary consumers, that is option A for question 30. So going to 31 now. Question 31. A characteristic feature of tropical rainforest is that it A. contains trees with narrow leaves, B. contains large number of plant species, C. contains fewer number of plant species, and D. has total annual rainfall of less than 50 centimeters. Now, a tropical rainforest is an environment that is richly blessed with high amount of water. And so since there is what we refer to as surplus amount of water in this environment called a tropical rainforest, there is no reason why the organisms there, particularly the plants, should not do well, since they have basically the necessary requirements that they need to grow. So it is not going to be possible for us to have trees that have narrow leaves. The trees in this environment, we have broad leaves, because there is going to be the ability for them to carry out transpiration. It is only plants that are found in environment that do not have surplus water, or in environment that have no water, maybe probably there is inadequacy of water. That is the environment where you have plants having narrow leaves. So the plants that we have in this environment, they will definitely have broad leaves. So this is not an answer. Option A is not an answer. Option B there says contains large number of plants. Yes, there is going to be very large number or large amount of plant species in that environment. So that could be our answer. Let's see if we have any other option. Option C there says contains fewer number of plants. That is not it. There will be large number of plants, that like we have said earlier on. And then it has annual rainfall of less than, no, The annual rainfall in this environment is higher than 160 centimeter cube. So the answer to this question there is option B, which is saying that it contains large number of plant species. Option B. Question 32. The study of how and why population size change over time is A. Population estimation, B. Population dynamics, C. Population ecology, and D. Population cycle. Talking about population size changes, it is talking about the dynamics. Dynamics here talks about change. We know that population is talking about the total number of organisms that can be found in an environment. Let me quickly put it here. Population is the total number of organisms found in an environment at a point in time. So the changes that we can see resulting in what we refer to as population is definitely going to be what? Population dynamics, not estimation. Estimation is still talking about the total number of organisms in that environment. And then population ecology is talking about the ability of the organisms there to interact with their non-living environment. And then population cycle, that is not also it. So the answer is option B, which is population dynamics, the changes that can be seen in the population size. So that is our answer to question 32. That is option B. Option B is our answer to question 32. Then we move to question 33. A severe and long dry season is a characteristic feature of A. Sahel savanna, B. Mangrove swamp, C. Sudan savanna, D. Guinea savanna. We can have all of this in this environment. Now, let me show us what the environments look like, ranging from temperate environment, an averagely hot environment down south. So we are going to be picking it up from the desert environment, which is actually in the north. So we have it ranging from Sahel savanna to the Sudan savanna, and then to Guinea savanna, and then we have the derived savanna. I will give us an example of places where we can have all of this shortly. So that the derived savanna, and then we have the humid forest zones. Yes, the humid forest zones. Now, looking at this now, the Sahel savanna is the top north. If I were to have Nigerian flag like this, something like that looks like this, I'll be having my Sahel savanna somewhere around this place here, and then my Sudan savanna cuts here, and then my Guinea savanna cuts like this, and then I'll be having my derived savanna here. Let me just depict them. This place here is where I will be having my Sahel. Here I'll be having my Sudan. Here I'll be having the Guinea. Here I'll be having the derived savanna, and here is where I'll be having the humid forest zones. So if you look at it now, it is this part of the country or this part of the world, the part that is in the far north, that usually have extreme temperature. So that is the Sahel savanna. A severe and long dry season is a characteristic feature of the Sahel savanna. That is our answer. And then we move to question 34. Which of the following is a nitrogen fixing blue-green algae of the soil? We have Rhizobium, Nitrosomonas, Clostridium, and then Anabena. When we look at all of this now, we have so many organisms here. So which one exactly is the nitrogen fixing blue-green algae? Listen, Anabena is a blue-green algae. So it is a cyanobacteria. Anabena is a cyanobacteria, like I said, a blue-green algae. Blue-green algae. Its genus is a filamentous. Well, it is filamentous, a blue-green algae that is filamentous. Let me put that here. Now, it goes into symbiotic relationship with so many plants. It's a symbiont, so it goes into relationship with so many plants. Now, going to what I was actually trying to talk about. It is capable of fixing atmospheric nitrogen. It fixes atmospheric nitrogen. That is a major action that it carries out as free living form that it is. Free living form, or in a mutual association, or in mutual association. So we can see all of these in the Anabena. It goes into mutual association with roots of some other plant. Mutual association with roots of some plants. Now, there are so many examples, other examples of nitrogen fixing bacteria that we can find reacting in the soil. Other examples, we have the nostoc. We also have the oscillatoria. These are examples of cyanobacteria that can actually carry out nitrogen fixing. So the answer to our question there, as seen now, is going to be option D. So question 35. The soil with highest water retaining capacity is option A, clay soil, option B, stony soil, option C, sandy soil, option D, loamy soil. When we talk about retaining capacity, we are talking about the ability to hold on to water, preventing water to be drained out of the soil. It does not permit the water to pass out of the soil because the soil type is not porous. So such types of soil, they actually form clogs, and that is where we find the clayey soil. The clayey soil has the highest water retaining capacity because it forms clogs and it prevents drainage of the water through the soil. So that is the answer to our question, option A. Option A. 36. The causative agent of poliomyelitis is A, virus, B, fungus, C, protozoan, and D, bacterium. The causative agent of the poliomyelitis is a virus, and that is the answer to our question. So what is poliomyelitis? It's also called polio. It's transmitted through contaminated water. It's transmitted through contaminated water or food. Through contaminated water or food, or through contact with an infected person. Also, through contact with an infected person. So those are the ways through which we can actually get this polio or poliomyelitis into the system. So looking at the question now, we find out that our answer is A, which is the virus. It is a viral infection. And so we move to question 37. One of the ways of controlling noise pollution in urban areas is A, by siting industries away from residential areas. B, that fuel should be completely combusted by engines. C, by planting trees on both sides of the road. And D, by wearing ear devices. Now when we are talking about noise pollution and ways to control noise pollution. There are so many things that can be done to control noise pollution, and one of them is by siting industries away from residential areas. Urban areas are places where you will definitely have industries sited. So possibly industries can be taken away far into rural areas or away from the city. That will make it less cumbersome. That will make the noise in that environment to be lower. Usage of fuel or planting of trees has nothing to do with noise pollution. And then wearing ear devices will also not limit noise pollution. So the answer there is option A, which is by siting industries away from residential areas. And then we move to question 38. A constituent of the exhaust fumes from electricity generating sets which causes serious pollution is A. Carbon monoxide, B. Water vapor, C. Ozone, and D. Carbon dioxide. When we look at the fumes that come out from electricity generating sets, which are what we refer to as generators in this aspect of the world, they actually emit smoke, and this smoke has carbon in it. It is a black smoke that is rich in carbon. Now the type of carbon that is emitted from such exhaust is actually what we refer to as carbon monoxide. It is not water vapor and it is not ozone. Ozone is found basically in the atmosphere. It is also not carbon dioxide because it is not emitted through a respiratory system of animals. So the answer to that question is the carbon monoxide, which is option A. And then we move to question 39. Which of the following is true of smallpox? A. It is transmitted by bacteria. B. It can effectively be controlled with antibiotics. C. It can effectively be controlled by vaccination. And D. It is a waterborne disease. Which of the following is true of smallpox? Now, smallpox is not transmitted by bacteria. It cannot effectively be controlled by antibiotics because it is not a bacterial infection, and it is not a waterborne disease, but it can actually be effectively controlled by vaccination. So that is the answer to that particular question, option C. And then we move to question 40. A pollutant that is mostly associated with acid rain is A. Nitrogen dioxide, B. Ozone, C. Fluorine. Okay, this particular question is lacking the fourth option, but the answer is right here. The answer is nitrogen oxide. That is the answer to our question. It is the pollutant. It is what results to acid rain. When the water coming from the sky mixes with nitrogen in the air, that is what results to what we refer to as acid rain. So the water H2O mixing with nitrogen is what results to this nitrogen oxide that we have here, and that is what we refer to as acid rain. So that is the answer to that question, option A. So option A is our answer to question 40, option A. Let's see question 41. We move to when the adults have reached a certain degree of weakness, the process of binary fission is replaced by conjugation in A. Paramecium, B. Euglena, C. Amoeba, and D. Plasmodium. Now looking at this particular question here, we find out that we have two different types of reproduction here. We have binary fission, which is actually from the asexual reproduction, and then we have conjugation, which is from sexual reproduction. When we talk about reproduction is the ability to bring to life young ones. Now there are two types we have A, we have the asexual, and B, we have sexual. For asexual, we have so many examples. I'll just list a few of them. We have budding, we have grafting, we have spore formation, we have layering, we have vegetative propagation, vegetative propagation, vegetative propagation, etc. Under sexual, we have just two. The first one we have under sexual, we have it to be called conjugation, conjugation, and the second one under sexual we call it fusion of gametes. Now I have now add here binary. Under sexual we have binary fission. So those are examples that we have of the types of reproduction. So this particular question is talking about two reproduction types. It's talking about binary fission, which is under asexual. It is also talking about conjugation, which is under sexual. That is what that particular question is actually talking about. So when we look at that now, we will have to answer the question this way. Now that we have distinguished between the two types of reproduction, which is a sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction, now we need to understand the particular processes that this question is talking about, which are the binary fission and conjugation. Now when we talk about binary fission, this is what we'll be having. Binary fission, binary fission, it is actually a process that undergoes what we refer to as cell division. So binary fission undergoes cell division. So what takes place during cell division? It is particularly a process where the cell undergoes what we refer to as division to replicate itself. So when we talk about cell division, we will definitely need to talk about mitosis. We will definitely talk about mitosis. So when we talk about mitosis, what are we actually talking about? In mitosis, let me quickly put it here. Mitosis actually has 5 stages, the stages of mitosis. So I will use these stages of mitosis to explain or to drive out our point of what binary fission is talking about. So stages of mitosis. Now we have 5 stages. We have the interphase, the prophase, the metaphase, the anaphase, and the telophase. So let me use this diagram to depict what we are actually talking about here. Imagine we have a cell organelle like this with its nucleus, and then from this phase here it goes into what will look like this, where the nucleus divides into 2, and then after that it goes into another process where we'll be having something that looks like this, where the cell nucleus is now moving into opposite ends of the cytoplasm or of the cell membrane, and then from that now we have a total collapse of the cell membrane such that it will be looking like this. In the middle we'll be having a total collapse of the cell membrane, after which it leads to total division of the 2 cells, and then it forms what looks like this. Now if we look closely, we will discover that, okay, let me quickly label them. This is the interphase. We have prophase here. Here we have the metaphase. Here we have the anaphase, and here we have the telophase. So usually we call the interphase and the telophase, we call them the resting stage. Now if we look at it, you discover that the organism that we are having here, this particular organism that we are having here, simply looks so much like the 2 daughter cells that we have here and here. So the 2 daughter cells have been produced from the parent cell. This is actually what we refer to as the parent cell. This one here is the parent cell, and this ones here, they are called the daughter cells. So whenever we carry out binary fission or cell division and mitosis, we usually have two daughter cells produced from the parent cell. So that is what binary fission is talking about. And then talking about the second process, which is the conjugation. Now, conjugation in this particular aspect of the question, because the question we are talking about is actually talking about the process whereby adults reach a certain degree of weakness, and then the process of binary fission is replaced by conjugation. So we are looking at the organism that carries out this particular process. So now we have explained what binary fission is talking about, and then the next one we need to talk about is, quickly, we need to look at conjugation. So conjugation here, I explain conjugation to be the second type of reproduction that is talked about. Conjugation is where conjugates come together to form new offspring. So conjugate of the cell comes together to form new offspring. So what particular organism are we actually looking at in this? It is actually the paramecium. Euglena, amoeba and plasmodium will not do such. It is the paramecium. So paramecium in the early stage will undergo what we refer to as the binary fusion, where it reproduces during mitosis to form two daughter cells. And when the organism has started getting old or weak, like we have seen in this question here, when the organism reaches an adult stage and it has reached certain degree of weakness, then the binary fission will be replaced by what we refer to as conjugation. So let me put this note here so we will understand what you're saying very well. In paramecium, when the cell reaches a certain level of maturity, when the cell reaches a certain level of maturity, or stress has started taking place in the organism, or stress is shown, they may engage in what we refer to as conjugation. They may engage in conjugation where the two paramecium cells called the conjugates now will temporarily join together, and exchange what we refer to as genetic materials. So that is basically what happens in the paramecium. So it has the ability to actually go through what we refer to as binary fusion, and when the organism has become of age, and particularly when stress has started showing on that organism, then it can change its type of reproduction to the conjugation from binary fission. So the answer we are looking for in that question is actually option A. So we move to 42. Wall, arc, loops and compounds are types of variation in A. Color, B. Fingerprint, C. Hair color, and D. Blood group. These are fingerprint patterns. Walls, arcs, loops, double loops and compound. They are fingerprint patterns. So that is the answer to our question. It is not color. The types of color we have, they range from dark, which is in the case of the Negros, through many shades of browns and golden yellow to white. So that is for the color, and then similar to that of the hair color. And then for the blood groups, what we have is we just have the blood group A, blood group B, blood group AB and blood group O. So this particular question is related to the fingerprint, and that is the answer to our question, which is option B. Option B. And then for 43, a couple has 10 children, all females. Which of the following best explains the situation? A says the sex determination was by the man's X chromosomes. B, the man's sperm count is low. C, the woman is not capable of reproducing male children. And D, the sex determination was by the man's Y chromosome. Now look at this question. See that the couple here, they have 10 children and all the children are females. Now what is responsible for this? From our options here, it is saying that the sex determination was made by the man's X chromosome. Now looking at this, now we have the male chromosome to be the determinant of that particular gamete. Now let's see how that happens. We have this, the male chromosome to be XY, and then we have the female chromosome to be XX. Now irrespective of what the male chromosome might have dropped, the only thing that the female chromosome can drop or that the female chromosome can donate is the X chromosome. So having this, now we see that the Y chromosome here is the determinant of what the offspring is going to be like. Whenever the Y chromosome is donated, that is when we can have the possibility of having a male organism. Now looking at it now, whenever the male drops the X chromosome, the only outcome is going to be the female. Let us see the possibility here. When this happens, what we'll be having is going to be XX, as we can see now. When we also have this here, the X chromosome of the male replicated with the second X chromosome of the female, what we still have is still going to be the XX. Now when we have the Y chromosome now, because that is the distinguishing feature there, when the Y chromosome of the male is donated as to any of the X chromosomes in a female, that is when we have the possibility of having a male organism. We have the XY in this scenario here, and we have the second one too, when the Y is donated from the male as to the second X chromosome of the female. We can also have the possibility of another XY. So that is what happens. So we need to understand that it is the male organism that brings about the production of a male species. It has nothing to do with the female's ability, because the female, the only chromosomes that the female have is the XX chromosome that can be donated and will also bring about the female gender. So that means, looking at our option here, the answer is that the sex determination was by the man's X chromosome. The man donated the X chromosome, and what brought about all of the offspring being females. It has nothing to do with the man's sperm cell count, because being low has nothing to do with the ability to produce either male or female. And then it is also not because the woman is incapable of producing male children. The woman will not have the ability to do that because the woman does not even possess the Y chromosome. And then the sex determination was by the man's Y chromosome. If it was actually the Y chromosome that was donated from the man's gamete cells, then it would definitely have been male offspring that would have been produced. But since it is the X chromosome that was donated, that is why all the offsprings are appearing to be female. So that is the answer to our question, option A. And so we move to question 44 now. A biological agent with antiviral properties is interferon, enzyme, antibiotic, disinfectant. Now, helping us to understand this question and to be able to answer it effectively, we need to understand some keywords, because this particular question is very, very tricky. So there are some clues that will help us to answer this question appropriately. First one is we need to understand what this particular word here means, biological agent, and then what this one also means, antiviral. When we talk about biological agent, we are actually talking about substances that are produced in a living organism or in a living host. Substances that are biological, they are produced in a living host, or they are of living properties. And then antiviral here talks about substances that act against viruses. So those are the two keywords that we'll be looking at, and so we want to look at the ones that actually has that property amongst our options here. So we'll be starting with the interferon. We said interferons are actually proteinous substances produced and released by animal cells. Interferons are substances. They are proteinous substances produced and released by animal cells. By animal cells, usually acting in response to the entry of viruses. They have the property of inhibiting viral replications, viruses and viral replications. So now that we understand this particular substance here, that we understand what interferons are, that will make it possible for us to actually have an idea of what the answer to our question is. But before we just go straight to picking, let us see what other substances here are. What are enzymes, antibiotics and disinfectants? Enzymes are chemical substances produced in glands in body of organisms, capable of altering the rate of a reaction or bringing a reaction to completion. So that is basically what enzymes are. Enzymes are substances produced in the body. They alter reactions in the body. So they bring about the transformation of certain processes in the body, bringing them to fruition. That is what enzymes are. And then talking about antibiotics now. Antibiotics are a type of microbial substances that are active against bacteria. That is basically what antibiotics are. And then we have the last one, the disinfectants. So disinfectants are chemical substances. They are chemical substances or compounds that are used to inactivate or destroy. They are used to inactivate or destroy microorganisms on surfaces. So basically these are the things that we have there as our options: interferons, enzymes, antibiotics and disinfectants. So having looked at this now, we discover that it is only the interferons here that actually have what you are looking for, being that they are biological substances produced in the body of organisms, and then they act against viruses. We see here that they are actively inhibiting viruses and viral replications. Enzymes are chemical substances produced in living body, but they do not act against viruses. Antibiotics, probably we have some of them that can be produced in bodies, but they act against bacteria, not viruses. And then disinfectants also, they are chemical substances that act against microorganisms, majorly bacteria. So the answer to our question is the interferons, option A. So we move to question 45 now. One of the advantages of outbreeding is A, we have pest tolerance, B, disease resistance, C, fast growth, and D, tall height. When we talk about outbreeding, we are talking about a cross that takes place between organisms of different species or unrelated species. Organisms that are crossed but they are not related. The species are not related. That is what we talk about here. So in such cross, what we'll be noticing majorly is that all the offsprings there, they are going to have several types of traits. But one major advantage that is looked out for, or that is noticed in outbreeding, is disease resistance. It is naturally not pest tolerance, nor fast growth, nor is it height or tallness in height, but disease resistance. Every geneticist wants to produce hybrids that will be able to resist diseases. So that is the answer to number 45th question, option B. So move to 46 now. An individual with blood group AB can receive blood from those in blood groups A. It can receive from blood group A, B, AB, and O. B, it can receive from blood group A, AB, and O only. That is meaning that B is excluding blood group B. Then option C then says AB only, and option D says A and B only. Now we look at this particular question here, we will discover that the blood type that we're actually talking about is blood group AB, and blood group AB is a universal recipient. Its characteristics looking like this. Majorly the characteristics of blood, we'll be talking about antigens. So the antigens that blood group AB has, it has antigen A and it has antigen B as well. It has antigen A and it has antigen B. So since it has the two antigens, it will be able to collect blood from any blood group that has antigen A and or from any other group that has antigen B. So any blood group that has antigen A can donate blood to AB, and any blood group that has antigen B can donate blood to blood group AB. And so if you look at it, all the blood groups, blood group A has antigen A, so it can donate to AB. Blood group B has antigen B, so it can donate to AB. And then if we look at the blood group O does not have any antigen. As such, it also has the ability to donate blood to the AB blood type. Also, AB on its own can donate blood to blood group AB. So that is the answer to our question. So the answer there is option A. So 47 question. The streamlined shape of fishes is an adaptation for A, securing mates, B, easy movement, C, obtaining food, and D, defense and attack. The answer there is to move easily, so it is for easy movement. It is not for securing mates, it is not for obtaining food, and it is also not for defense and attack. It is for easy movement. That is the answer to question 47, option B. And then we move to question 48. An example of a poikilothermic organism is A, lizard, B, cockroach, C, rabbit, and D, bird. When we talk about poikilothermic, we're talking about organisms differentiated based on their blood temperature. So we have two types. We have the poikilothermic organisms, which are actually the cold-blooded. cold-blooded organisms. So here we'll be having organisms that live in water or near the water. So we have majorly the Pisces, which are the fishes. We also have the reptiles. Majority of the reptiles are also cold-blooded, like the snakes, the lizards, the crocodiles, alligators, and the rest of those. They are actually cold-blooded. And then the second type, we have the homoeothermic. Homoeothermic organisms. These are warm-blooded organisms. Warm-blooded organisms. Example, that is where we'll be having the mammals. We have other organisms like the aves. Aves are also warm-blooded organisms. So that is what we have there. So for poikilothermic organisms, they are cold-blooded organisms. So let us see the options that we have there. Lizards, yes, lizard is an example of a reptile, so it is a poikilothermic organism. Cockroach, rabbit, and bird, they are not cold-blooded organisms, so they are not poikilothermic. So the answer there is option A. So we'll move to 49th question. All living organisms are constantly involved in a struggle for existence. This was proposed by A. Morgan, B. Darwin, C. Lamarck, and D. Wallace. This particular question is emanating from what we refer to as evolution, that all living organisms are constantly involved in a struggle for existence. So talking about adaptation and evolution here, that is what brought about this particular question, and it is actually a particular postulation that was brought about by Darwin when he was trying to explain what evolution actually talks about. So that was the person that postulated the theory. So it was Darwin. So that is the answer to our question there. Charles Darwin was the one that postulated that. So that is the answer, option B. And then we have the last question there. Adaptive radiation is illustrated in A. Modified insect mouthparts, B. Dentition in mammals, C. Wings in birds and bats, and D. Appendages in insects. Now when we look at this particular question here, we need to understand something here. We are actually talking about evolution as well, like the previous question. This one is also talking about evolution. So what aspect of evolution are we actually looking at? But out of evolution that we are looking at is the part that distinguishes between organisms. So we have something called the adaptive radiation, or I can also call it the divergent evolution. Now let me quickly explain it. In evolution, like I said, adaptive radiation is a process in which organisms diversify rapidly from an ancestral species into a multitude of new forms. Adaptive radiation is a rapid increase in the number of species with a characterized great ecological and morphological diversity. In little words, what I'm saying is we have basically two types of evolution. We have the divergent evolution and the convergent evolution. So let me start with the divergent evolution, which is actually what our question is talking about. Divergent evolution. Divergent. So is when individuals in one species or closely related species acquire enough variations when they acquire enough variations in their traits, enough variations in their traits that leads to two distinct new species, that leads to two distinct or varying new species. So this is basically what divergent evolution is talking about, or like we have in our question, the adaptive radiation. That is what we are actually having here. Now what is it saying? Example, we have birds and bats. Now looking at the both of them, we are having them to have their wings, feathers, their head and similar structure. But we notice that the wings of the birds, they are actually different from the wings of the bats. And that is why sometimes they even see bats as mammals. The wings of the bats are different from the wings of the birds, because we notice that the wings of the bats have some networks on them, unlike those of the birds. So they are organisms of similar species, but they are having or portraying distinct variations. That is what we refer to as divergent evolution or adaptive radiation. And talking about the convergent evolution now. Convergent evolution, we have it to be the opposite of divergent evolution. So this is when two unrelated species unlike the case of the divergent evolution, we have related species giving rise to unrelated species, or giving rise to varying species when they are being crossed or something like that. But in the case of convergent, is when two unrelated species develop similar traits, because they live in similar environments. Because they live in similar environments. So that is basically what the convergent evolution is talking about. So we can see that the divergent evolution is similar to what our question is talking about, which is the adaptive radiation. And so the answer there is the wings in birds and bats. That is the answer to our question, option C. So this brings us to the end of the 2014 Jamb Biology question and answer series. So I'll plead with you to try as much as possible to go through all that has been discussed in this particular series. Take a look at all of the explanations that was given to all of the answers, and please try to practice more questions. The more questions you practice, the more familiar you get with the questions, and then you know the answers that are given to all of the questions. I wish you success in your exams, and please, if you are yet to subscribe, don't forget to subscribe. Click on the notification button so you get notified of subsequent uploads. Like our content, share them with your friends, and we want to hear from you, so drop your questions in the comment section. Thank you very much, and success always. Bye for now.